2020, a year that for most was supposed to be a year full of new beginnings, adventure, and rebirth. It would become a year that the world wouldn't ever forget.
The number one opportunity to make a difference here is to flatten the curve, flatten the increase in the number of cases, as we've talked about. Flatten the increase of the number of cases coming into the hospital system. And the best way to do that is by reducing density. Density control valve, right? And that's what we have been doing all along. And we're going to take it to the ultimate step, which is we're going to close the valve, all right? Because the rate of increase in the number of cases portends a total overwhelming of our hospital system. So we're going to put out an executive order today, New York State on pause, policies that assure uniform safety for everyone.
And good afternoon, I'm David Navarro.
And I'm Shade Better-Noir. Liz is off tonight. Let's get right to the latest on the coronavirus outbreak. Today, Governor Cuomo announcing starting tomorrow at 5 p.m. a ban on any gatherings of 500 people or more. But starting tonight, all Broadway shows are suspended until April 12th. Several other cultural institutions are also shutting their doors, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Carnegie Hall, and Lincoln Center.
Sports also impacted within the last hour. Major League Baseball announcing it is delaying the start of its season by at least 2 weeks, and spring training games have been canceled. Now that follows other leagues such as the NBA, NHL suspending their season, and college basketball tournaments all canceled. Comes as the number of COVID-19 cases in New York State climbs to 328 cases. In New Jersey, the cases rose 29 cases, the most in Bergen County.
We have several reports for you tonight. We want to begin with NJ Burkett live on Broadway and Times Square. Big developments there, NJ.
Yeah, absolutely, Sade, no question about it. The governor's order will shut down all Broadway theaters effective at 5 o'clock this afternoon, as you said, until April 12th at least. He is determined to prevent a large-scale spread of the virus by banning large public gatherings. And of course, Broadway theaters hold at least 500 people or more. So that is what the governor is attempting to try to do. He's trying to control the spread of the virus. Broadway gatherings seat well over 500 people. It's a huge industry for the city and one of the world's most celebrated tourist attractions. It's an industry, Sade, as you know, that employs untold thousands of New Yorkers. Now, the governor says he's mindful of that, but he believes he's got no choice. Today, the Met, the largest art museum in America, is closing its doors after at least one staffer has reportedly a presumptive case of the COVID-19 coronavirus.
Hi, my name is DJ Tommy T NYC out of Brooklyn, New York.
So my name is Kevin Boucher. I'm the property manager at the Knox Street Apartments and the Livingston School Apartments in Albany, New York.
Hi, my name is Vicari Fox. I'm a community leader. I'm the founder of Community Matters Inc., based out of Albany, New York.
Hi, my name is Viva Vidalia. I'm a drag performer in New York City and freelance costume designer.
My name is Yamar Carter, and my title is part owner of Yamaguchi.
How you doing? My name is Rashad King, and I'm also a part owner of Yamaguchi.
Yeah, I'm Bugati Holly, founder of Gangsta News Network, GNN, also a Black Lives Matter and community activist.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey, and I am an HIV Stop Smoking spokesmodel. I'm an activist, and I'm self-employed.
Sam Fein, F-E-I-N.
Hello, I'm Shei T. Manon. I am an actor and filmmaker locally here in Albany, New York.
I'm Sue Johnson. I'm the HIV prevention and STI educator here at Whitney Young Health in Albany, New York.
90s. So my first question for you is, how were you impacted by COVID and the pandemic?
COVID impacted me very strongly, like everybody else. I mean, everybody was affected. I mean, all over the world, everybody was affected somehow. It affected me because I was working a job at a media agency for 5 years, and it quickly came to a halt. So that was a bit of a disruption. And also, I DJ also on my other time, so that canceled a lot of upcoming gigs for the spring, the summer, and throughout the year. So that, definitely impacted me in the pocket. And then as time went on too, it impacted me mentally because I wasn't able to see friends, family. I live alone, so I was in an apartment all these days by myself. I mean, thank God for computers and phones. I was able to keep in touch with family and friends. But it definitely impacted me, I would say, financially and mentally.
At the time that COVID happened, I had 2 apartments that I was running Airbnb from. And obviously when it started trickling down that we were going to have cancellations, I started seeing the cancellations way before the government started shutting down or anything like it. So I was already preempting. So it was like cancellations began to happen. It was one after another, after another, after another, and it was just like, should I renew my second apartment lease or should I not? And that was one of the, I guess, tipping points that made me not renew my second apartment. And from there on out, it was just like, I knew I was going to be heavily impacted. My finances were going to be completely impacted by COVID.
When they shut everything down, it was hard because, we didn't get any help for months. When it came, we had to file for unemployment. Unemployment was backed up like crazy. Half of us didn't even get to finish our claims until the end of April, and that's when we got our money back, or we got the money and the back pay and everything. But for a while it was hard. It was very difficult financially, mentally wise. Like I already have mental illness and stuff like that. So when the pandemic happened, it's like anxiety went through the roof. Depression went through the roof, etc. It was basically, to answer the question straight up, I was affected in every way, like a lot of people.
In the beginning, they told us to shut down for 2 weeks because we were not essential. And we came up with a way to be essential by producing masks. And we were asking for a donation or whatever you could give. And we're making them from material that was 3D printed, laser cut. And that's how we were surviving COVID.
Well, I mean, I am a creative, and I think people think that we sometimes live in a bubble. But in actual fact, a lot of my career is very dependent on the career of the rest of the world. So the same issues that everybody was having is the issues that I was having. So when things closed down and bars shut down and restaurants shut down, I went from working 5 nights a week to not working at all, which is, not different than your regular businessman or whatever. So that's really how it's affected. It affected me monetarily. When the whole thing started, I actually was homeless and I lost my apartment. Thankfully, I found somewhere now. But it was a time I had spent a lot of time kind of creating a rhythm and a pattern and a routine in terms of money flow and paying bills and being happy and performing, and then the world ended. And now we're just trying to survive.
This is a World Trade Center bound E-train. The next stop is West 4th Street.
My fellow Americans, tonight I want to speak with you about our nation's unprecedented response to the coronavirus outbreak that started in China and is now spreading throughout the world. Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic. We have been in frequent contact with our allies, and we are marshaling the full power of the federal government and the private sector to protect the American people. This is the most aggressive and comprehensive effort to confront a foreign virus in modern history. I am confident that by counting and continuing to take these tough measures, we will significantly reduce the threat to our citizens, and we will ultimately and expeditiously defeat this virus. From the beginning of time, nations and people have faced unforeseen challenges, including large-scale and very dangerous health.
How did you think the pandemic was handled by our local politicians, the government, leadership, the whole shebang?
I think it was handled in the beginning. I gave them a pass because this was something totally out of left field. We weren't prepared for it. So it was kind of a learn as you go experience. I knew like they were getting their feet wet. They were trying to scramble for solutions on how to keep everybody sane and get everybody the proper help. But as time went on, I feel they ironed it out to a certain amount of, I would say, you know, it was ironed out where they were able to get a grasp of the situation. So then I started thinking they let a lot of things go to the wayside as far as it came for like unemployment and stimulus. They left a lot of people hanging out to dry, and I thought that was a disgrace, you know, because people were really in need and still are in need.
It was handled very poorly. Poorly is putting it nicely. It was handled horribly. There was so much mixed information about what the virus was. Mind you, for all of us, this is a new virus. Even though it has been around, and the COVID, and you know, we have COVID-19, but the SARS virus has been around for quite a while. This is the first that we've ever heard of it in our media anywhere. This is the first time we ever heard about it. So it was handled very horribly. We didn't have enough information. We didn't know how it affected. We didn't know how it was spread. We did not know what was the incubation period. We did not know anything. And when they started giving us information, then they started giving us information that was contradictory. One person would say this and another one would say that. This and that, this and that. So you didn't know who to believe. Who was the one source of information that you would go to that you could believe and you could trust? I don't know about you, but that left everyone in limbo. That also created for everything to happen, because when they started mentioning wearing masks, many people thought that yes, it was helpful. Others didn't believe it was helpful.
I don't think there is or was a way to handle a global pandemic properly. From where I'm sitting, it looked like a bunch of people who were scared and confused leading a bunch of people who were scared and confused. So I mean, politicians don't live in a citadel away from us. This was a global pandemic that was affecting everyone, so they were being affected as people too. I think I think some people were certainly using this to gain something. Whatever that may be, whether it be money or power or stature. But for the most part, I think everyone was just doing what they felt was the right thing to do at the time. Or at least I have to believe that. Otherwise, the world would burn in flames.
They didn't do shit. They still ain't doing shit. I thought this shit was handled poorly all around. Again, going to what I said at the beginning. It's like, okay, you want to shut everything down, but you're not giving anybody any help in order to keep them home and keep them safe. I remember signing up for the COVID alerts on for the New York State thing. I remember seeing that they were requesting money for these for all the corporate businesses and stuff like that. At the time when the numbers were going up high and everything. We needed that help. They could have gave us that help to us, to the people. Many people had to blow through their savings and everything. It was hard. Yeah, they handled it poorly, and they still handle it poorly. And you know, the fucking stupid ass mandates and stuff like that make no sense. It's like, how is it that, I'm going back to just before the summertime, how is it that the malls were being able to open, which attracts more people, but the gyms weren't able to? How is it that restaurants have to shut down at 11, as if COVID knows for some reason that at 11 you're the most vulnerable? Like, stupid shit like that, make it make sense. And how is it that small businesses that shut down, but Walmart and Target and all these places didn't have any restrictions at all, and they got all the business, they got all the money? Meanwhile, small businesses, they have either they're gone, they're shut down, or they're struggling right now.
Well, I think at the national level, it was handled terribly. Trump didn't take it seriously, called it a hoax, didn't provide the assistance to individuals, to businesses, didn't, you know, I think created this whole division, made mask wearing a political issue. You know, at the local level, I think at the state level, it was generally handled well. There were some mistakes, I think, you know, when it came to, you know, shutting down the lockdown at the time. You know, I think that made sense. You know, we've done some things to provide assistance, not far near enough, but you know, there is the issue. Governor Cuomo is now being investigated with the nursing homes, and I think that's. I think we need some more information, but it looks like there was a clear mistake made there that unfortunately led to, you know, a lot of elderly people losing their lives, and then now we're seeing a cover-up of that. You know, it's becoming clear that there was a cover-up, and that's being investigated. So, you know, I guess it was mixed at the state level, I would say. At the federal level, it was terrible, but at the local level, we've been trying to respond with assistance. We created a program with grants for small businesses. I proposed legislation that passed that put a cap on the delivery fees that third-party apps like Uber Eats and Grubhub can charge to restaurants. But, you know, ultimately, we got to pass the stimulus bill. We need to tax the rich, and we need to provide a lot more assistance to people.
Honestly, no. I feel like when you look, like take New Zealand, for example, they've completely stamped out COVID. And they enforced shelter in place in every single aspect. And people were still able to survive. So I feel like it wasn't, I know it's states' directives versus federal directives, and I think people in the middle and no, it wasn't handled correctly at all. I'm sorry. I just feel really passionate about it, so I'm a little scattered. But you know, if there was some way, I feel like a paltry $600 twice, $1,200 for a year is not going to cut it as far as reimbursing people or giving them federal aid. I don't feel like a lot of places were really reinforcing washing your hands, putting a mask on. I've been, you know, in the limited travel I've had, if you go upstate New York where there's significantly less people, there are cases in the Sacandaga Lake area. They went from 2, and then once the summer hit, it exploded to hundreds. And I don't think we've got enough positive reinforcement from the state. I mean, Governor Cuomo spoke almost every day at a press conference for the first 3 months of the pandemic, and it was a lot of hot air, in my opinion. And then you have people in the southern states, and where I feel like it wasn't taken seriously enough. I mean, Florida was hit so bad, and we still have all the, they didn't have travel restrictions. It was mismanaged from the get-go.
That side! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! want it? What do we want? What do we want it? We all gotta remember, there's no statute of limitation for murder.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't sleep!
Get involved! Make change fucking happen! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
If I said you to you, you would interpret that as I am classifying the entire black community. You are classifying the entire police community, and that's just as wrong.
Somebody should teach them and explain all these reasons. Something they need to explain, but they not seeing clearly. I don't want you to fear me, I just want you to hear.
It started off as peaceful protests in the afternoon, quickly took a dramatic turn by night. There were reports of demonstrations happening all over the city, but the bulk of the activity was here in Brooklyn as well as Manhattan. Here at the Barclays Center at one point overnight, there was a tense confrontation between police as well as protesters, but these protesters were on the move, at one point shutting down the Manhattan Bridge. And there was also some disturbing images of dumpsters, trash cans, and police vehicles going up in flames, also storefronts being smashed in, looting taking place as well. A video has also surfaced showing two NYPD vehicles pushing into a crowd of demonstrators, and officials are saying that those vehicles were being struck by rocks as well as other objects. Mayor Bill de Blasio came out late into the evening with a stern message for the agitators, saying that anyone basically talking about these violence and promoting this violence and agitating this violence, he said that arrests will be taking place. In total, as of this morning, we know at least 120 people were taken into custody and several officers were injured as well. Willie, it certainly was a tense night here in New York City.
Alrighty, so question number one is, what do you think started this new Black Lives Matter movement?
What I think it originally started from was basically police brutality and racial bias. And we see it a lot go hand in hand every day within the city of Albany and other places. What originally started was, like I said, when we all know about the killing of George Floyd. I call it a killing for a reason, because he was murdered and he was killed by the police. That's one of the instances that did start it. But I feel like the rise of it was when police brutality was more, it became more into the light instead of being hidden than anything else. Basically, it was more put out there towards the community leaders, and you know, the things that were done in the dark were now coming to light because we started as a community asking questions.
A generation of people, of youth, that's no longer willing to just talk. They're just tired of talking. Like this, like they have a saying, we are not our ancestors. Granted, we are our ancestors, but we are not our ancestors. Before, they rather go about it the peaceful way. You know, back in the civil rights days, you know, they was peaceful about it. Mm-hmm. It's a whole new breed out there now. It's a new age.
What is the overall goal with this whole new movement?
The overall goal, I think everybody has a different objective, but I think the overall goal that we do have is that to end racial bias and police brutality and white supremacy. That's the overall goal, and to basically have some understanding of, look, this is how you treat our minority areas, our people that are black, brown, yellow, green, you know what I mean, nobody of the white descent. Basically that the overall goal is that we need to be treated fairly and equally.
To talk louder than the original civil rights movement did. The civil rights movement, Martin Luther King and them, they spoke loud. They spoke loud. But if we could speak louder, you can get a beginning to some change. see the police reform happening around the country. It's little things happening, but that's all we need.
Protest is over, and people are still here. People are still charged up.
Today's the anniversary of Juan Mosquedo's death. And he died. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
All right, come back. Thank you.
No justice, no peace. No peace.
Now we're going to discuss, some of these I'm going to skip, but we're going to discuss the riots and protests that happened in the summertime. What was your take on, or better yet, walk me through, if you can, what happened that led to the craziness with the riots and everything?
Okay, so I was one of the first people that were there for the first night and second night. Basically, walking through that in a whole nutshell was very disturbing. I still, even when I hear loud bangs or anything else like that, I still get very scared. And the reason why I say that is because the first night, the tear gas, and hearing the loud bangs from like even just the littlest things that they did, the tanks coming after us, a lot of things that happened in those first 2 nights. And the reason why I believe people started rioting was for the simple fact is that you came at us with full force and you used gas that was expired. And then you used the community as bait basically to sit here and say, okay, you don't want to follow our laws and our regulations or however you want to put it out there. We're going to do this to you. But yet, did they realize there's babies in these houses that are around? The windows were open. People were hospitalized. The Mayor Kathy Sheehan has not even said anything about the people that were hospitalized for the first 2 nights. And the simple fact is that you use such extreme force on people with things that we paid for, and we cannot protect ourselves. And did we chose to protect ourselves the best way we knew how to do, and that was run. You know, so running away from that, feeling all those things, hearing people in their houses crying because they can't breathe, you know, was a big thing for us. And then the riots that went on, I believe that was the reaction of getting tear gassed and shot out with pepper bullets, with pepper bullets or rubber bullets at that time, because it wasn't pepper bullets, rubber bullets at that time. How much harm do you cause the community for basically exercising their rights? So that was the biggest thing. And then what led up to the riots of course, was that. And then after that, what led up to basically the protesting is because you wanted to sit here and go against us as people. And the people stood up for themselves and said, you know what, you're going to do what you're going to do to us, but doesn't mean that it's going to last forever. And has there been significant change? No. There has been some change where basically you said, okay, let's get a board of people together and do this, to this, to this, and listen to the community. But yet none of the actions that you had spoke about has been, implemented within law enforcement, or even in your own, even with Mayor Kathy Sheehan. We're still going through a lot of things, and even dealing with COVID, people are starting to protest because now they're getting kicked out of their houses. So that leads up to where we're at now, is where people are basically being, I'm trying to remember the word, basically being evicted for no reason. And that's just going to lead to more and more and more, because the community will respond, and that's what we're doing.
Albany police started it. Like, Albany police started it. Like, it was peaceful. And then once the crowd gets too big and they realize, oh my God, these people are for real. They're standing here and they're not going anywhere. So they have a trick that they do. And the trick is to put up a curfew. Because you can't arrest anybody for expressing their right by protesting. You can't do that. But if you put a curfew on it and it goes past that curfew, now what is that? It's illegal to be out here in a big group like so. So they did that. They started all of that. Because every time a riot popped off, it was after a curfew was put up. Pay attention to it now, because I mean, that's their way of doing it. It's always peaceful. It's always peaceful. Yeah, there might be a few pieces of black pepper in the salt, but that's nothing to remove that. You can get that out of there. No, that's nothing. But they choose to say, all right, everybody get it. Man, I seen them shoot rubber bullets straight at people. And the proper procedure is to skip it on the ground. You shoot it to the ground and it bounces. I seen them. Like, wow, shoot right at people. Albany Police Department, if there was a fire going, a grease fire, Albany Police Department was a gallon of water. And they poured it incessantly on it. They knew what was going to happen. Like, they did it. The police in all these cities where this is going on. No protest just starts off and everybody just start tearing shit up. No, that's a lie. We march, we say we gotta say, people want to join, come on in, and when we get to where we going, we stand about and we keep reiterating what we want until, and unfortunately, when we do things like this, police want in. So what they do, they pull up in force, and then they want to put all this stuff on and trying to what's that word? Like, trying to intimidate us. When they stay there with all them shields, they trying to scare us. Like when we went to Washington. You should have seen how much police was there. It was buku police. Everybody was out there. CIA, FBI, everybody was out there. You seen what happened on January 6th, right? There was no damn police. There was a couple officers. So you see what I'm saying? Like, the police, they started up. They remind you of the kid back in the days when the parent ain't looking and they'll like do something to make the kid start crying and then act like they didn't do it. So now this kid that's crying all the time gets in trouble for always crying. And meanwhile, the parent don't even know the other kid's sitting there bothering them, messing with them. This kid will be all right if you just let them be. It's Albany Police. That's my analogy on that. And Albany Police started all of that. All we wanted was peace.
Break these shits. Break these shits. Break all that shit. And you too.
Do you think, or do you feel that the city of Albany has even taken steps to bring about change? Because we've had these issues locally.
No. Simply put, I remember growing up in Albany. We lived out here since what, 1992? Here it is, 2021. I remember back in the days there was an officer, Officer Ben Sturgis. And he was a community cop. He was a beat walker. Ben knew everything in the neighborhood, outside the neighborhood. Ben was the first there. Ben was cool. It wouldn't surprise me none if somebody came up to Ben and just gave him information how cool Ben was. The whole community having the familiar face and the cool cops. These kids that's going, these officers are kids that just graduated from high school, got a little badge, now they tough. They don't come where we come from. You putting people that's not from an area in an area, you think they're gonna adapt and act the proper way? No, they scared. They scared.
You better go suck Craig Apple's dick, because I think he's an angry man. Go suck Craig Apple's dick, Kathy. Get this shit straightened out quicker. He's angry. You know what sexual frustration is? Thank you, Kathy. I know how to suck dick really good, engagement.
The owner of Jimmy's Pizzeria started a fund, one of several for the family, and today Aishan's parents spoke about all the support they've received. All day, people stop by to pay their respects to the family of 11-year-old Aishan Davis. Neighbors, friends, and strangers. There are tributes left nearby. His parents cannot believe their cheerful, happy boy is gone.
He just want better for our children, and for them to have took my baby. The way they took him, that's not fair.
Aishan was killed in gunfire Sunday night. Police say he was standing in a group on Old 6th Avenue in Troy and was hit when someone opened fire from a car. Since then, thousands of people have donated to help the family.
It's very overwhelming. I mean, it's been amazing. Like, we didn't expect none of this. It's like everybody is coming together, you know. Like, my son touched a lot of people, touched a lot of people's hearts.
Employees at Snowman in Troy donated some of their pooled tip money. Aishan used to help out at Jimmy's Pizzeria. Owner Tony Buchanan started one of the funds for the family. He says he's been getting calls from all over.
What else needs to happen? You know, I think it caught their hearts. Seeing a little boy who had such a successful life ahead of him, you know, be taken away for nothing.
I want somebody to step forward and say what they got to say, turn yourself in. Like, you know what I mean? Because if you don't, whatever happened in the dark comes to the light, and the Lord don't lie.
When the George Floyd killing happened and the riots here in New York and stuff like that happened, what was your take on all that?
Whew, that's a strong question. It was, like I said, it was very sad, the whole situation with the George Floyd thing. I mean, it was just like, come on, man. Like, it was a repeat of so many things we've lived, of just the brutality. So that part, again, it was kind of just like a blow to the stomach. But also, too, at that time, at least here in the New York area, the pandemic was going on, but our cases were starting to shrink a little bit. And we started getting a little bit of freedom. We were able to do beaches, go out in parks, little things were, little tads of freedom were opening up. So it was kind of like, okay, you felt kind of good. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, bam, the George Floyd incident happens. And like I said, it was like a blow to the stomach. Because it just mentally and physically, to see what that man went through, I mean, it was very disturbing. And then the after effects, the riots of the protests, the fighting. I mean, I live here in Brooklyn, in Clinton Hill, not that far from downtown Brooklyn. Every night, protests in front of my building, around my building, all around the area. Every night, it seemed like I was in like LA or something back in the day when they'd fly helicopters over. Every night, helicopters buzzing over my neighborhood, just, you know, trying to maintain the protests. And then some of the protests did get out of control. So you saw like a lot of cops rushing, you saw people, you know, disparaging. It was just very, it was a lot of tension, and it kind of brought back flashbacks to me of the 90s, of just different, you know, racial tension times in New York. And, you know, it was kind of like, it left a bad taste in my mouth, and I know it was a bad taste in a lot of other New Yorkers' mouths, just the way things were going and just the ugliness of the police and the people clashing. Like I said, it was just, you know, definitely, it was something that, you know, definitely took a chunk out of your heart.
It's affected me as a person of color, but that is not of African descent, who is not a black person, to realize, to check my own privilege even within my place of POC-ness. While I do experience racism every day being, you know, a Latin person, a Latina person, it's just nowhere near comparable to that of a cis black man in this country. Especially not comparable to that of a cis trans woman. A black trans woman in this country. So I had to really humble myself. I had to take my own advice after telling white people to shut up. I had to shut up and listen more, and then act on what I'm being told to do by black people on how to help black people feel equal in this country.
Wow. Well, let's just put it this way. The pandemic happened. It happened to every single American or everyone around the world. You're not so triggered by the government. Yes, there was a lot of misinformation, especially to our black community. But then this happened with George Floyd, and you're just like, okay, where do I stand? It shook me. It shook me. If my center of gravity had already been shaken because of my health issues, being HIV positive, now my center of gravity had just been torn away. I did not know where I stood, who I was as an American, as a black man in the United States. I did not know left from right, up from down. It really, really shook my sense of being and my existence to the core. I had to recalibrate and refine who I was for myself so that I could stand up for myself. I don't know if that makes any sense for any other person in the world, but this is what I felt like. I was displaced, to say the least. I didn't have a place in the United States of America. I didn't have a place as a black man. And now where do I stand? With my illness, with the color of my skin, who am I? And how do I advocate or stand for myself when I don't even know where I'm standing or who I am? Once I recalibrated and found once I recalibrated, I found union within my own people. It was focusing on my tribe. That was the most important thing. And there were some people from my tribe that were ready to go up against and fight against the United States government. I was looking for solutions that did not involve more violence. But there were just, you know, when you're displaced, you're trying to find your place, it is very easy to get swayed from one side from the left to the right to any side. Once I recalibrated and found my place, I felt like it was something that needed to happen, and the only way that it would have gotten the attention that it got is because we were in the middle of a pandemic. Had the resurgence of Black Lives Civil Rights Movement had not happened during a pandemic, I don't think people would have taken so much notice as it was that we were willing to die, risk our lives in the middle of a pandemic to go protest than to continue living under this regime and this way of life. that speaks volumes. When you're willing to, I'd rather die than take my chances and wait till I'm gunned down by the police. That's the bottom line.
One of the things I also want to touch on is during that time, it wasn't just black cis people getting killed. We also seen a lot of our trans brothers and sisters of color getting killed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. You know, you being a trans woman of color, how did that affect you?
You know, it's not ever easy to be in a position where you're seeing people who look like you killed on television. And it's also, what makes it harder is also when you see the deaths of those people be celebrated by people who are supposed to be in charge of you. I'm very fortunate to live in New York City, which is a super liberal bubble, and I'm around a ton of queer and trans people and cis allies and straight allies. So I get to exist in a space where I'm able to see how it is possible for people of all genders, of all creeds, of all colors to kind of live harmoniously. So it was very disheartening to see on television that even though my bubble is safe and warm and kind and loving, the rest of the country, most of the country, is in the complete opposite state. It definitely made me want to retreat. It definitely, you know, I'm not proud to say, but it made me want to rethink my own transition. However, I allowed myself to be sad and to be mad and frustrated about it, and I went through that so that on the other side, I could get to a place where I'm strong, fortified, comfortable to put up the work about how do we make sure that the death of George Floyd and the death of the, I believe it was 27 black trans women, doesn't continue to happen.
What do you think could have been done better with the whole pandemic and unemployment and all that stuff?
What I think could have been better, like I said, the beginning was learn as you go, so it was very scrambled. But as everything started leveling out as far as this is what life is going to be now, the way we were living it, I think they could have continued the aid. They were giving $600 extra. It was like dangling a carrot to people. It's like, okay, we're going to give you this extra money, but then we pull the carpet away from you. You can't do that to people because people are depending on that extra money to pay mortgages, rent, put food on the table. So you're thinking, okay, I'm okay a little bit. I'm getting this extra, you know, extra little income of this unemployment. It's going to help me. At least I'll have some kind of sane way of operating, and then they pull it away from you. I understand they have to renegotiate, but that's where the problem was it was a big disgrace. The renegotiation took almost 3-4 months just to come to a conclusion. So here are people starving for months, getting evicted or threatened to get evicted, losing homes, losing their roof over their head. You know, it was just a big mess, and I think that they left the people out to dry, and I think they could have came up with a better, stronger solution to make everybody happy, and at least just to be, you know, living some kind of way comfortably, temporarily, while they resolve this full pandemic.
I think more of this is transparency, excuse me, and accountability and language. Those are the three things that I think that need to be out there. We need to be more transparent about the laws that you say that we have to abide by. We need to be more transparent about what proactive policing and community policing look like in our communities, because a lot of people do not know. We need to be transparent about the language that we use towards community members, because not everything that a cop says to me I could understand either. Even when I read about based upon what policing looks like, or what type of training police go through, I don't understand half the words. You know what I mean? And as an educated black man, black woman, if I don't understand the words, then how do I expect community leaders or community members of that are black men, women, children to understand the same words? And as far as I say accountability, is that police are so worried about communities taking accountability, then why can't law enforcement take accountability for when they're wrong? You can't just keep pushing back and forth, but yet at the end of the day we're pushing against each other either. If you say you're here for the community and that's what you're supposed to be like, then do that, you know. But at the end of the day, you're not doing that. Let's not go back to the term of what police were actually used for back in the day. That'd be a whole nother story. But what I'm saying is that that's where we're going back to basically beat on our black men and basically say stereotypically that our black women would not be nothing but would be single mothers, because the thing is that that's where that racial bias comes from, and these are the communities, the minority black communities that you come after. So my basic thing is that what I'm gonna say is accountability, transparency, and language.
What are the steps government officials are taking to help those who've been impacted by COVID?
Well, you know, a big part of it is passing legislation, is, you know, fighting to get the funding. I think, you know, the biggest thing right now is that people need money. People are struggling financially and they need money in their pockets, and businesses need money because they're on the edge. And then there's the public health aspect. I think, you know, from the public health aspect, we got to get the vaccinations out. We have to make sure testing is out there to get good information to people, be honest with people and get good information so people trust our public health system and follow the regulations, get tested, get vaccinated. And then there's individual elected officials who are often, you know, on the front lines in their community, often, you know, reaching out to neighbors, giving them information. I've been involved in community discussions about how to get vaccination clinics in our community, how to make sure that people are aware, and we have flyers available so people know where to register so they can get vaccinated. So there's a lot of different roles from government officials that are important to be involved in.
Now, you mentioned you are HIV spokesmodels with that. In that sense, how has the pandemic and stuff like that, how has that either helped or been a hurdle with, you know, being HIV positive, you know, having...
Well, I will explain how, when you have HIV, you're supposed to see your doctor every 3 months to get your lab work done and get a complete status of where your HIV is at that moment. I can honestly tell you, I saw my doctor in January. I didn't get to see my doctor again till December. I went a year without a doctor's appointment because of all of the way it was treated and handled. I was still getting my medication and things like that, but it was, for us to get the services that we needed, it was very difficult. You'd be on the phone for about 3 or 4 hours on hold, and you wouldn't even get the services that you needed. And I know, 3 or 4 hours, not 3 or 4 hours, it was like 30 or 40 minutes on hold. And most of us got tired, we just hung up. You know, I'm exaggerating, but it felt like 3 or 4 hours. It was, you know, especially when you're trying to get a prescription renewal, or you're just trying to get an appointment just to see where this is at, and then you're trying not to go to the medical facility because you know that going there's going to be other people that are sick, and you already have a compromised immune system. You don't want to put yourself at further jeopardy. So going to a medical facility is just not an option.
What was your reaction when COVID first hit the capital region and New York State in general?
On a personal note, I was really just incredibly nervous and very overwhelmed. My parents are older. My father is immunocompromised. And then in relation to my job, I was really concerned about how are we going to work with patients? What's our safety going to be like? What about all the staff needs? Are we going to make accommodations for people with disabilities? Like, how is this even going to work? Because it just felt like we got swallowed up by a tidal wave. Like, it happened really quickly, and I was just devastated emotionally. So the first thing we did was to cancel all of March and April patients. We worked on having a telehealth communication system, so patients could either use Doximity or our patient portal to have virtual appointments, which worked out well, especially for people who were seeing therapists or our mental health providers. We even had telephone appointments for folks that didn't have the internet capability to have a telehealth visit. We got rid of the front desk. We installed people at the front to ask screening questions, take temperatures. We had to reduce staff, so some people were temporarily furloughed. I myself was home for a month, working from home and contacting patients on the phone. And we spaced out the seating arrangements upstairs. All the staff get their temperature taken, so it was really just everything kind of went into, not lockdown, but more secure. Patient safety came first, and I'm really proud of that. That everybody really pulled together to make sure that the patients felt safe. And we started offering testing. We were one of the first major clinics to do that in the Capital District. I think that was incredibly savvy on our part, to know your COVID-19 status. So in response to COVID and people battling with addictions, so we actually have outpatient therapy, OTP, opioid treatment program. So we do methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol. And they were putting their trust and faith in the patients because they couldn't have a lot of people. People normally line up outside the building looking for their dose at 6 a.m. and then in the afternoon when they reopen at 2 p.m. So they were trusting people to take doses home and take them as they're directed until they could come in. So the people were like scattered throughout the week coming in to get their dose for 7 days. So that was incredibly helpful. Groups were put on hold for outpatient. Now they're doing more telehealth for groups, and they've been making it accessible for people who just don't have the opportunity or the money to buy an iPad. So they've been making more accommodations, which I think is fabulous. It's now a year later, it's better with inpatient, but last year it was really, really challenging to try to get somebody into a facility because, yes, they had to have 50% less workforce, and places were already at capacity as it was, but now it's gotten so much better. Yeah.
Now, you being a DJ and everything, how did you get through the pandemic? What were some things you did to kind of help out with, at least getting a little bit of income? Because I know many people, they actually got their hustle on during this time.
Yes.
What did you do, especially utilizing your DJ skills, to help with that?
Well, what I got to do, I was able to reorganize a lot of my music files that I kept putting off to the side for many months and close to a year. So I was able to do that. I was able to I got rid of some older gear, upgraded to newer gear, just to plan for the future. Did tons of podcasts and mixes, and then also the live streaming, trying to strategize on how to do my live streaming come out with it very strong and better. So that's what I was doing.
Man, what did I do? I think, so there was certainly a lot of things to keep me busy. As a designer, I've had bins and bins of fabric that... Really, Cart? Right. As a designer, I have bins and bins of fabric, and I was still able to work even though some of the fabric stores and materials were not easily accessible and closed. So I went through, like, I made it work. If someone asked for a costume, I'm like, well, this is what I have, this is what you can get. In terms of performing and keeping those creative juices flowing, drag queens pretty much widely around the world kind of switched to a more digital approach to doing shows. So at the beginning and throughout, I was doing a lot of performing online, and I need to be creative in order to be happy, and finding happiness during the pandemic has been difficult. So I realized really quickly that if I'm not creative, this is going to get a lot worse. So anything that I could do, even patching jeans for my roommate, I just needed to be creative, and that's really what's been sustaining me this whole time.
Eviction moratoriums are meant to protect people who lost their jobs because of the pandemic, but landlords who had authorized evictions before COVID-19 pandemic hit are now left in limbo and out of tens of thousands of dollars. CBS 2's Andrea Klein-Thomas has the story you'll see only on 2.
She's playing the system, and the courts are allowing people like her to do this.
This landlord, who asked that we not reveal her name, is talking about her tenant who lives in the apartment connected to her home.
May 2018, she came, and August 2019, she stopped paying.
The landlord first put up these notices demanding back rent. Then at the beginning of March, a judge granted an eviction for April 30th.
I was relieved that she was going, but then COVID came. And it's no evictions.
Joseph Strasburg is the president of the Rent Stabilization Association with 25,000 members and says the scenario is not uncommon.
When the governor extended the moratorium, he did not make a distinction between pre-COVID cases and post-COVID cases.
Governor Cuomo's eviction moratorium now extends until January 2021 and protects people with financial hardships due to the pandemic. But those with earlier cases are also benefiting. Housing courts in New York resumed eviction cases on October 12th, but warned the process would take much longer than usual.
You can theoretically have completed cases, and somewhere in 2021, assuming they have lifted the moratorium, then there's another delay of several months before you could actually get that tenant out.
We knocked, but the tenant wasn't home to give her side of the story. The landlord is already out nearly $17,000 and also needs the space for her disabled husband.
He was a fireman, a paratrooper. And we got to go through all this for her.
For now, she has to wait, with back rent and legal fees piling up. Andrea Klein-Thomas, CBS 2 News.
So my first question to you is, in your own words, tell me how has the pandemic and the eviction ban in New York State affected you as a landlord/property manager?
So I have to say, once it all started, there's a lot of unknowns. We just didn't know what to expect with all this. So there's a lot of confusion between us, the court system, no real solid direction on what's going, what to take. Before COVID, we had a routine, batch of tenants that we take to court. If they didn't pay their rent, we put them on payment plans, with the court. Once the pandemic hit, the courts shut down, and we had no backing to help us, have these tenants get their rent paid. So in the beginning, it was a little bit strange, but we were able to get through it, and we did our own payment plans with people. And it seemed to, for the most part, it worked out. But overall, it's been a little bit rocky, but it's also been a big learning experience. So. what we have done is reached out to tenants and residents that are behind on their rent and kind of guide them to certain directions where there is funding available. If they have a subsidy like a housing voucher through Albany Housing Authority, we tell them to, like, hey, if you have reduced hours at work due to COVID, or if you got laid off due to COVID, let your housing manager know at Section 8 of your situation, and they'll be able to assist with that. Other times we'll direct them toward Albany Housing Coalition, United Tenants. The VA has great programs that are able to assist a lot of residents with that, but overall we didn't receive anything directly. We would kind of guide tenants to those kind of funding sources.
For the third straight day, tenants' rights groups protested in downtown Brooklyn, calling on the city and state to cancel rent in the middle of the pandemic. While they'll eventually have to pay their landlords, for now at least, Governor Cuomo gave past due renters a reason to exhale.
No evictions as long as we are in the middle of the epidemic. I had done that right away by executive order. I then extended it by executive order. The legislature then came back into session. We then wrote it into the law. I signed the law, and the law is clear until when? Until I say COVID is over.
The order allows courts to prevent evictions by suspending deadlines related to civil litigation. Now it's up to the Office of Court Administration to decide whether or not they'll accept the executive order. But State Senator Zelnor Myrie says it's not enough security and stability for renters.
People don't know when the moratorium will lift. They don't know when the courts will resume their actions. Landlords are confused, tenants are confused. So we need actual stability.
Myrie has proposed legislation that would extend the eviction moratorium for 1 year from when the state of emergency is over. The bill would also provide relief for owners of small property and small businesses.
We don't know what this pandemic is going to look like, but what we do know is that the recovery will be much, much longer.
But 14,000 families still face eviction from warrants issued before the pandemic, so they're not protected under the state law. And other tenants could face eviction if their leases expire. Mayor de Blasio says he will do everything in his power to prevent people from getting evicted and suggested creating a payment plan for those who simply can't make the rent.
Allow them to pay off the rent over time when they finally have resources. But no one should be put out on the street because they can't pay. They literally.
And now one of the ideas that Mayor de Blasio floated to prevent the evictions is preventing the marshal's office from enforcing them. Although at this point, it's unclear if he has the power to do that. He says tonight his office is looking into it. Reporting live from downtown Brooklyn, Joe Masiri, Pix 11 News.
Now, what has been some of the most challenging experiences during this situation, as a whole?
I would say the most challenging thing is that the courts have been closed. So even, whether it's people that haven't been paying their rent, non-payment issues, like we can't depend on the courts to evict them. Same with people that are, causing a lease violation with dogs, cats that are not allowed, noise, that sort of thing. It's just been difficult with that. But luckily, we haven't been hit that hard with people not paying their rent. Actually, it hasn't, for us at least, it hasn't been that much significantly worse than non-COVID times. But I've heard horror stories of other landlords and property managers that have had it worse than me. So I guess we just kind of got lucky with that. I don't agree with the eviction ban overall because it basically keeps our hands tied with everything. I feel like the courts should have been open this whole time, but if the unpaid rent was directly due to a COVID job loss or something like that, then I feel like there should have been, there could have been more of a ban on that, but with overall lease violations and things like that, I just don't think that they should have shut down everything completely.
People left because of COVID, because at one time we were the COVID hotspot. People left the city. We know people leaving the city for their homes in the Hamptons or Hudson Valley, young people going back to wherever they grew up, Chicago, etc. We have to get them back. We know complicating that is going to be this economic transformation that is happening where people are now working from home and they're reevaluating their basic business modality. They're doing that all across the country. Maybe I don't have to go back. Maybe I can keep half my workforce home. That's happening everywhere. We know you also have, happening at the same time, an increase in crime. You had the incidents of looting. For people who are in this city now, they will say the homeless problem is worse. The graffiti problem is worse. So you have all these elements happening at the same time. And it is not a good combination of elements. Which ones are more impactful than other ones? I don't know. My instinct is, if I had to guess, which I shouldn't do, but if I had to guess, my guess would be the business transformation is going to be have the most potential impact. If businesses just decide, I don't need to pay for $25,000, 25,000 square feet of space. I don't need it. They worked from home for 4 months. It was fine. That could be a problem. And the other factors, I think, are aggravating factors. Also, one more aggravating factor. The main attractions for New York City. Why do you pay a high rent? Why do you pay the income tax surcharge? Greatest restaurants in the world. Greatest cultural institutions in the world. I love Broadway. All right, but those things are not operating now. So that's an element.
Are you concerned with the large number of people that have and continue to leave New York State during the pandemic?
I think, I'm not sure right now what that's going to look like long term. I know it's more of an issue in New York City, and I think part of that's New York City is such a densely populated area, and where COVID spread so quickly that, people who had the means to get out left during the pandemic. I think most of them will go back. I think people like living in urban cities where there's a lot going on, where they're close to their work, where there's public transportation, and they, can go out to restaurants and all the entertainment that New York City has, and be close to their neighbors and be in that diverse area. There's a lot of benefits to that, and I think people will recognize that, and they'll come back to it. So I guess a little concerned, but I think it would be too early to be alarmed by it, because I think it's really it's a reaction to the pandemic right now.
So, do you believe the pandemic was a blessing in disguise?
In some aspects, yes. The reason why I say that is, I don't know, it helped a lot of certain people. Like for me, I could say it was a blessing in disguise for me. Besides all the bullshit, with that extra $600 a week and whatnot, I was able to finally pay off my credit card, so I'm no longer in debt. And my credit score went up from, was it about 6 something to about over 700 and whatnot. I was able to finance my business. So I got my LLC during the summertime with the money that I got. I was able to get the equipment that I've been trying to get for years and whatnot. I was able to save up money to eventually move and all that stuff. So in some ways it was a blessing in disguise. For other people, I'm pretty sure it was too, because I also remember during the summertime, many people actually got their DBAs and their LLCs and whatnot. So I think in some very little aspects, it was a blessing in disguise. It helped many people. Actually, yeah, not only that, the pandemic also really opened people's eyes to see that, you know what, my employer does not give a shit about me. So let me go start my own business. Let me go, do shit on my own. Let me go finally, live my dreams that I've been putting on hold for a bit. Let me, go find somewhere where I'm celebrated. It also really exposed the bullshit that went on not only within our city, but within our government. That's a blessing in disguise, because many people were not really thinking or really seeing that the shit was crazy. But then they got to see, you know, so yeah, it was a blessing in disguise in some ways.
Angry parents gathered to protest the mayor's decision to close New York City's public schools and switch to online learning.
We were promised that decisions would be made based upon data and science. Well, the data and science are in, and the risk of spread in schools is low, and the harm that we are doing to our children is high.
Mayor Bill de Blasio said the measure was necessary because the city's positive rate on coronavirus testing has hit the 3% threshold. After beating back the virus, the city has seen a late fall resurgence. But with restaurants and non-essential shops still open, parents have accused the mayor of a double standard. De Blasio says it's just a matter of time before other businesses will also be closed.
Everyone who honestly might feel somehow a little better if they knew that indoor dining was going to be closed or gyms were going to be closed, I'm sorry to tell you that for the sake of those business owners and everyone who loves those gyms and loves indoor dining, it's just a matter of time. It's very likely to be in the next week or two.
The decision comes as Americans begin making plans for Thanksgiving next Thursday. The holiday is one of the country's busiest travel periods, but some health experts are recommending 2-week quarantines for those visiting areas with high infection rates. The CDC has taken it one step further, urging people to stay home and not travel for the holiday. For those playing it safe, Zoom has announced it's lifting its 40-minute time limit, allowing people to connect online for up to 30 hours on Thanksgiving.
As Thanksgiving approaches, coronavirus cases are rising across the country. Planning for Thanksgiving, a traditional time for giving thanks, basically, by inviting friends and family into your home, has turned into an anxiety-driven time where many people are trying to decide whether or not to let friends and family into their home for safety reasons. Now, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has put new restrictions on businesses, including a 10 p.m. curfew on bars and restaurants. Restaurants already had a 25% limit on indoor dining, but it's the new restrictions on Thanksgiving gatherings, the 10-person limit, that has really hit a nerve with law enforcement. Joining me now is Sheriff Richard Giardino, a New York sheriff, to talk some more about this. Now, Sheriff, public health officials, they believe that Governor Cuomo is doing the responsible thing here with these restrictions and limitations on Thanksgiving gatherings because of the surge in coronavirus infections. Why don't you agree?
No, I believe his intent is appropriate. He's trying to do the most he can do to try and stop the spread of CV. But let's talk about CV first. The vast majority of cases, over 97% of the people who contract COVID-19, it's mild and moderate symptoms that go away within 2 to 3 weeks, and then they bounce out of it. These restrictions on what you and who you can have in your home and the number, I believe, are unconstitutional.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is criticizing law enforcement officials who refuse to enforce the state's latest COVID-19 restrictions, including the 10-person cap on private gatherings ahead of Thanksgiving. Watch this.
Well, I don't believe in that law, and therefore I won't enforce it. That is, frankly, frightening to me as an individual, frightening to democracy. It's arrogant, and it violates your constitutional duty.
My next guest says, guess what? He is actually not going to enforce the governor's limits on social gatherings. Fulton County Sheriff Richard Giardino joins me now. Sheriff, great to see you today. Thank you for being with me. First of all, what goes through your mind when you hear the governor say what he just said, that you don't have the right to not follow the restrictions?
It disturbs me because I think he doesn't understand the distinction between a law, which we learned when we were young, that a legislature passes a bill, it goes to a governor or president, and they either sign it or veto it, and an executive order. Legislature in New York abdicated the role by giving full authority to the governor. These are executive orders. That's why he can issue an executive order to a bar, a restaurant, or a gym, because they all have licenses under the state liquor authority or the health department. And so therefore he's got control under the authority of his departments, and they can limit hours, they can limit masks, they can limit distancing and seats in the restaurant, and they can fine them. But an executive order aimed at an individual in their home, everyone just gets that sense without even me having to cite the law that something's wrong with that.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has been branded a Thanksgiving Day hypocrite. Yesterday, he told a radio interviewer,
"My mom is going to come up, and 2 of my girls is the current plan. But the plans change, but that's my plan."
That's after telling everyone else not to gather for the holiday.
You know what love is on Thanksgiving? I love you so much, and I'm so thankful for you that I'm not going to see you.
A barrage of criticism on social media followed. Meghan McCain posted, "You've got to be kidding me." Conservative commentator Candace Owens piled on.
"Oh, it's COVID for thee and not for me."
The uproar has now forced Cuomo to cancel the get-together. He said he broke the news to his mom, Matilda.
I didn't want to disappoint my mother. 89 years old, she's thinking, how many Thanksgivings do I get? This vaccine is exciting because I believe this is the weapon that will end the war. It's the beginning of the last chapter of the book.
What are your plans B, C, and D should the vaccine not be enough?
Well, I think we're all optimistic. I am optimistic. I think the bottom line is the only way we're going to get out of this is get as many people vaccinated as quick as we can. But of course, I think one thing we're concerned with is the variants, and will the vaccines cover the variants? We're probably not going to go back to normal. We're probably going to have a new normal. There's probably going to be people are going to have to wear masks probably a little bit more than they did in the past. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but I think we're just going to have to be cautious that a substantial number of people getting vaccinated won't necessarily solve all of our problems. And we're still going to have to listen to our public health officials, and we're going to have to potentially wear masks and be a little bit careful. But we hope that we can get back to as normal of lifestyle as we can.
It's the storming of the Capitol. Trump supporters forcing their way into the halls of Congress. The remarkable scenes unfolding on live TV.
I can see at least half a dozen protesters scaling, literally climbing the walls of the Capitol to get up to where their fellow protesters are.
They broke the glass in the United States Capitol, and now they are climbing through the window.
Stunned TV anchors can't believe what they're seeing.
It is an absolutely shameful, disgusting situation that we are witnessing here.
Oh my gosh. It looked like a woman, very gravely injured, covered in blood.
The mob smashed through doors and set off fire extinguishers. These guys chased a Capitol police officer up the stairs. Some even made their way onto the Senate floor. This guy sat in the Speaker's chair. Could you ever imagine seeing that in America? Capitol Police barricaded the doors of the chamber with a cabinet, their guns drawn as the invaders try to break in. Congressmen and women took cover under their desks.
We were just told that there has been tear gas in the rotunda, and we're being instructed to each of us get gas masks that are under our seats.
Stephen Fabian is in Washington.
When it came to the whole January 6th thing where they stormed the Capitol and stuff, what was your thoughts on that?
Like,
I was so happy when they stormed the Capitol on January 6th, because leading up to that day, they made us seem like Black Lives Matter, any kind of activist that's not, you know what I mean, on the Trump train, like they made us seem like such animals. I'm talking about Wisconsin, everywhere there was some police injustice happening and something might have spun out of control and buildings got caught on fire, right? Okay, they made us seem like such animals. And then when we went to Washington, like I said before, it was peaceful, it was great, it was awesome. January 6th come. January 6th showed the world who the real fucking animals are. It's not us. It's not, these dudes ran up in the Capitol. Dude, you have no idea. If you've never been to Washington, you have no idea. Do you know, not so long ago, a dude got shot and killed for trying to jump the fence to get over to the White House lawn or whatever? They killed him. It was a girl who, I forgot her name. She got killed recently, not so long ago. Cause she tried to like bust you and she made a wrong turn somewhere around there, something like that. And she got killed. Like, oh man, like the world seen the bullshit. The world seen the bullshit. Especially once the reporters start talking about how the Black Lives Matter movement it was so highly security, it was so much security. But then yes, I loved it. I want it to happen one more time just so they can get it straight. It's not us, it's them. Yeah, I was happy. Oh, I loved it.
Tonight, we're learning new details from one of the women accusing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexual misconduct. And we're also getting reaction to a story we told you last night about the alleged cover-up of death statistics in nursing homes during the pandemic. Correspondent Brian Yennis reports tonight from Brooklyn.
To see the facts come out, it's just shocking.
Tonight, outrage from nursing home victims' families over documents obtained by Fox News that show since mid-April 2020, the Cuomo administration was specifically tracking how many residents died of COVID-19 in nursing homes and how many residents later died in hospitals. The documents raise new questions about why the state's Department of Health chose to exclude the hospital deaths from their July 2020 report, despite having this data for months. The report said 6,400 New Yorkers died in nursing homes, but the true death toll was 9,800, including hospital deaths. The Cuomo administration said the hospital deaths weren't made public because they could not verify the data. DOH said in part the department spent months reconciling the information received, deduplicating, correcting data entry errors, etc., in order to understand and report accurate fatality data from multiple sources. But the New York Times and Wall Street Journal report Cuomo's top aides purposely excluded the true death count from the report over fears of political consequences for the governor. Meantime, a current aide who says Cuomo aggressively sexually groped her is speaking out for the first time, telling the Albany Times-Union it was the culmination of 2 years of grooming. It's the most serious known sexual harassment allegation against Cuomo. The state attorney general is investigating all allegations.
Yeah, I heard about the tweet and what it said about comments that I had made, and it's not true, Zach. Look, I fought for and I believe a woman has the right to come forward and express her opinion and express issues and concerns that she has, but it's just not true.
One of the women accusing New York Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexual harassment is speaking on camera for the first time. Charlotte Bennett spoke exclusively to CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell. She describes deeply uncomfortable conversations with the governor in which she says it became clear to her that he was trying to sleep with her.
Governor Cuomo faces an inquiry and calls to resign over this, along with allegations from 2 additional women and other controversies. He has apologized for the behavior that he says was unintentional, but he also says he will not step down. For more on all of this, let's bring in Norah O'Donnell from Washington. Norah, good morning to you. This was a very frank, very direct interview.
It really was. Good morning, Tony. You know, a lifelong New Yorker, Charlotte Bennett began working as an entry-level assistant to Governor Andrew Cuomo in January 2019. She called it a dream job. When Cuomo became a celebrity for his handling of the pandemic, Bennett says the attention emboldened him, and she alleges he began sexually harassing her. Looking back on all of this, how would you describe Governor Cuomo?
He is a textbook abuser. He lets his temper and his anger rule the office, but he was very sweet to me for a year in the hopes that maybe one day when he came on to me, I would think we were friends, or that it was appropriate, or that it was okay.
Bennett says their professional relationship took a turn on May 15th, when she alleges the governor started asking her about her love life and became fixated, repeating over and over again her history as a sexual assault survivor.
So he goes, "You were raped. You were raped. You were raped and abused and assaulted."
Why do you think he was fixated on you as a survivor of sexual assault?
I think it's really strategic. I think abusers look for vulnerabilities, previous traumas, the idea that maybe I'm more willing to accept behavior because I have a history of sexual violence. Perhaps I'm not as confident in myself because of my history.
What are your thoughts on the recent news on Governor Cuomo and the nursing home deaths during the pandemic?
I think the governor, it seems clear to me that there was a cover-up. You know, I want a full investigation, I want to get the facts, but it seems clear to me that, you know, Governor Cuomo covered up a mistake that he made and withheld information from the legislature and the public, and he needs to be held accountable for that. You can't, as a public servant, you have to be honest and open with the people. You know, if he had gone to the people and said, "Look, I made a mistake. You know, a lot of decisions had to be made, and we made a mistake, and we're really sorry," I think people would have been disappointed but understood. But then when his reaction was to cover it up and to use his power to withhold information, that's just unacceptable.
Do you think he'll be impeached or charged?
I don't see him being impeached, and I'm not too familiar with exactly what those rules for impeachment at the state level are. I'm more familiar with at the federal level. I don't see him being impeached. I don't know if there are, you know, charges that could go against him. I think it's going to be like a lot of these things. It's a political thing. We're seeing a lot of Democrats now, Republicans as well. We're seeing a lot of Democrats now, you know, demand accountability from Cuomo for the nursing home scandal and for the sexual harassment allegations. And so, you know, I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I support a full investigation of both the nursing home scandal and the sexual harassment allegations. And I think that if those sexual harassment allegations, if they turn out to be true, I think he should resign.
So what's in store for New Yorkers after a year full of controversy, pain, and downright craziness? I guess we'll have to sit back and watch.